Video, and today we are going to be taking a look at all of the top cut lists from the recent UK Remote Duel Invitational Qualifier. Took place last weekend. You may have seen some deck lists coming out from the channel, so we've got Owen's top 8 list already out on the channel. I'm expecting to get the first place list up very soon as well. Yep, this is a remote duel event. Before we get into it, I do just want to say huge thanks to the RaidnTrade team for supplying all of the deck lists, for running the event. I've heard that it went extremely well, and they've been doing a pretty good job with all of the recent events. And also thanks to Skrelpling for helping out with the stream that Fafa ran, and for helping out with the visuals for some of these deck lists. So let's get into the event. So it was a 45 player event for this qualifier. Everyone who was attending this event had already received an invite from an extravaganza. So there are kind of 3 tiers of this. You have an extravaganza where you earn your first invite, or some of these players have actually come from a YuGiOh day. Then you get to the invitational qualifier. This gives you, if you make top cut, lets you go to the invitational, which is like a higher level. You're representing your geography or your split here. So this is the opportunity for UK and Irish players to compete and take part potentially in the invitational. So 45 players from this. Most represented deck is Virtual World with 8, then a split of 5 Drytron, 5 Dragon Link, 4 Eldritch. Interestingly, it's 3 Zoo, 1 Invoked. Personally, I think all of those are fairly low representations relative to the power of those decks, but people really wanted to be featured on stream and to top this event with, more interesting decks. So you've got 4 Subterror, lots of support for that deck following the impressive showing in the NA Invitational events. 4 Invoked. Got 2 Dogmatic and 1 Shadow, 1 Mech Knight. I'm going to assume the Mech Knight's Ace, but I'm not sure. 3 Infernoble. They were doing pretty well, actually. Infernoble's really one of these decks that people have sort of pushed back because it's just not so capable of playing through all the hand traps as some of the other combo decks. However, it doesn't get hit so badly by some of them. Like, for example, Lancia is just not as powerful against that deck as some of the others. And then we've got 12 other decks. Interestingly, there is an Orcus player here. There's a Tri-Brigade Lyrilusk, Shadow Dino, all sorts of cool stuff going on. So nice to see some different decks in representation. Onto the top cut. So 8 players in top cut, 4 Virtual World, 2 Dragon Link, 1 Dinosaur, 1 Subterror. Interestingly, no Drytron. If we looked at the extravaganza that we had before, 50% of Drytron players from the event made it into top cut. So very interesting that none of the Drytron players who made it into top cut for this event, none of them made it in. But you got the 1 Dinosaur there, that's pretty interesting, and the 1 Subterror as well. Not much to say about that. I think the 50% Virtual World is kind of expected. It is just one of the absolute blowout decks. It might have had more representation in Top Cut if it had more representation in the event, but only 8 of the 45 players there. So you go from, 8 out of 45 to 50%. It's pretty decent conversion there. So on to the deck list. Top 8, we have a list here from Sam H. This is the first Dragon Link list. So you can see it's not like a absurd combo. Sure, it's got the ability to go through Delindrus, LP, and Pisty and set up like a slightly more impressive board. But the thing is, there's no like Apollo here. So you can go like Fibrax and work through some stuff to get to like Savage, Abomination. Probably those, and I feel like there's going to be another interrupt alongside those, but it's probably just tidying that you set. So it's not going for like absurd floodgates like it used to do. It's just going for a few disruptions and a very interesting ability to play through things like Nibiru, which is super impactful in certainly the UK and Ireland meta. For hand traps, we've got Lancia, Ash, Gamma, and Droll. So plenty of hand traps to deal with the modern format. And lots of ways to actually trigger the Gamma when your opponent tries to interrupt you. Because your deck is just so good at resolving effects without monsters on the field. Interestingly, only 2 of the Dragon Maid, which searches the trap. But then 2 of the trap. So I don't know. I guess you can bring it back with like Pisty and stuff anyway, so it's not a huge problem there. Looking at the side deck, we've got lots of people super prepared for Drytron still, despite the fact that there's just no representation for it. So the cycle readers are there in the side deck as well. The droplets to deal with the big blowout boards, and then Lightning Storm has really picked up popularity recently. So that features in there. Nibiru in the side is an interesting one. I would generally expect it to be in the main, but you see there's just not really a lot of room to add more. Like, you've already got 12 hand traps in the main. Do you really want to be adding more? Probably not. Seals is really good in the VW matchup, so you probably don't need an awful lot extra going into the other matchups. So you just sort of prepare for those instead. And then Twisters and Reboot, both really good against the various Shadol players who are still floating around, and pretty decent against Eldritch, though not total blowouts. Then we've got the top 8 Subterrorist from Owen. You can see the full deck profile on the channel, which will give you a lot more insight than I'm going to be able to glean right now, but hand traps are D-Shifter and Nibiru. I will say this a lot. I think Nib's really impactful for the UK and Ireland meta. Lots of people on decks that just lose to that. For draw cards, you've got Prosperity and Duality, and Talents as well. Obviously no Desires, because this is a Red Eyes list. So Red Eyes is like your aggressive pushing engine. And then you got the Floodgates in the summon limit, and there can be only one. Extra deck is a lot of variation in here. Again, full detail in the deck profile. If you go ahead and watch that one, you'll probably get a lot more insight. But it's basically just options, and you have a lot of space, so you can put in things like the Intus and you've got the Anaconda for your other like Dragoon backup, and you've got loads of Waking the Dragon targets in there, because triple Waking the Dragon is in the side deck. Again, as I say, lots of people are on Lightning Storm at the moment, so you just punish them really hard. If they hit 2 Waking the Dragons, they probably lose at that point. We've got 1 Cosmic, 3 Evenly, 1 Harpy, 2 Lightning Storm, 2 Mask of Restrict, and 3 Mind Drain. These are very interesting. Mind Drain has like an incredibly high impact against Virtual World and an okay impact against Drytron. And then Restricted is just blowout against Drytron. So yeah, you've got like Floodgates to combat the meta in the side deck, and Floodgates that are good against the meta and just good all-rounders in the main deck. Then the next top 8 list is Josh's Dinosaur list. So hand traps are Ash, Droll, Nib, and Gamma. So again, I think that's very similar to the Dragon Link list that we just saw. These are very, very popular hand traps, although we got the Nib in the main this time around. Dino played by Josh is one of these things where it's not like, I don't know, when I look at it, I sort of look at it as a very consistent deck that sets up a few disrupts and then hand traps your opponent out of the game. You can't actually make the VFD in the extra deck, but you can Reaper your opponent's one, and that just wins a lot of VW matchups, which is really interesting because they still won't expect it, and you can just do that at so many points, and they won't be able to gamma you because they'll have more monsters, and there's just lots of great things to say about Reaper. The only issue is, of course, it's not adding anything to your hand. So if they are able to set up disrupts that aren't VFD at that point in the combo, then you might struggle a little bit against them. Otherwise, he's got the Prosperities featured in the main deck, along with a Feather Duster, which is interesting because I don't think like back row decks are super popular. So that might kind of depend on your matchup, but regardless, you're always going to hit something against like Virtual World and stuff anyway. And because Drytron representation is so low, it's basically never a dead card. And even if you did have a Drytron matchup, you got Droll in the main deck, which is like absurdly good there. And yeah, Ultimate Conductor is still pretty decent in a matchup like that too. Extra deck, you've got the Dweller, Lagia, Dolka. You've got your usual Nightmare lineup. He's opting to run the Cerberus, which I think is it's probably a good choice for this list. You can like hit a Zeus when they put it in the wrong zone, which is quite good. And he's playing the Lambda, so you can always have your live gammas, which is cool. Yeah, I quite like the extra deck actually. Side deck, we've got the Cycle Readers, Reapers again, triple Lightning Storm. He's already got the Feather Duster, so just put that in. Not opting to play evenly, instead going for the Reboot and the Double Twisters, which I think varies depending on the matchup, but it's one of those things where lots of game 1s are really long, so you don't want Reboot in game 3. So yeah, it's I don't know, it's kind of 50-50 on my opinion on Reboot, because I think Reboot is an absurd card. I think it's really, really good. But there are so many game 1s that are very long. But when you're playing Dinosaur, you're probably not having very long games, because you just summon the Ultimate Conductor, and that's normally game. Interestingly, he has got the summon limits in the side deck for when he knows he's going first. I think this is really cool, because it just stops loads of decks, right? So you could literally just side this into any deck where you know you're going to be going first and your opponent's going to have hand traps that stop you. So when they Lancia you, then you just play that. Yeah, interesting, he's not playing Lancia. Reaper having a bigger impact for him, which is quite cool. Okay, on to Herman's list. Herman's been doing some really good stuff at the UK and Ireland events recently, joining in with those ones, and he returns with another Virtual World list. Is he playing the 2-2? Yeah, he's still playing the 2-2, but he's got 3 Nyan, so he hasn't cut one for that. He hasn't got any Virtual World names for anything, right? No, okay. But he is playing the 1 Goods, which you like to see it. No Prosperity, though. He looks like he's cut that, because he was playing that at the Extravaganza. Cut that one for this event. Instead going for the Desires. 3 Talents. I think this is a really good call. Lancia is the kind of card where you can potentially shotgun it, and we've seen a lot of people on DB shotgunning it early. So your Talents just becomes Pot of Greed, whereas your Prosperity would have been nothing at that point. So I really like that as an option. And then the Trapline, so he has cut the 3rd Chooch for the Zwanwu still, but I think that was how it was going before anyway. Extra deck, pretty standard. It's got the Utopic Future in there to break apart the different boards. And keeping in the Break Sword and the Wonder Seuss, and the double Cloud Castle still. So yeah, you've got the lines for all of the players, because you've got the Volcanic Mech in the extra deck too. For the side deck, you've got the triple Cycle Readers, so again respecting Drytron a lot with Cycle Readers and Drolls. But Nibs and Gammas inside rather than in main, so I guess that's why he's cut really right. He's only playing 6 hand traps in main, and then he just fits those into the side deck as a result. Yeah, just side deck is all hand traps, and Dusters and Pancratops, so really not respecting back row very much. But if you've watched the stream, you'll know that Virtual War just has a really interesting grind game matchup where if they can get into the game at any point, they tend to steamroll so many resources in 1 or 2 turns that you shouldn't have to worry about things an awful lot anyway. So we're on to top 4 now, and we have Jamie's list here. He's got a full deck profile available online as well, I'm sure. But just looking at things here, he mained Ash, Ghost Ogre, and Gamma. So this is another Virtual World list. He has decided to cut the 3rd Nyan for the 2-2, which I go back and forth on whether I think that's worth it or not. And then he is playing 2 Pot of Greed, 2 Prosperity. So he likes the Prosperity. He's not too worried about people dropping Lancia. And if we looked at the other top cut lists, not many people maining Lancia. So I think that's a pretty decent call for this particular meta. As long as he didn't go up against Herman, then that might be a bit awkward if Herman drops the Lancia and then he doesn't have the Gamma, because there's no talents in here, so you can't really capitalize on that aspect. He is playing the Fortune Tune, which we've not seen an awful lot of people playing. I think an interesting one is, if you can still see Herman's list, he didn't have the Gossip Shadow in the extra deck, so he wasn't going for that line normally, whereas Jamie was going for it. Still respecting the fact that opponents can drop a nib on you at really awkward points, so you just have your Gossip Shadow to try and stop that kind of thing. Otherwise, he's got the Fan in the extra deck. I think that's generally a pretty unpopular choice, and it looks like he's cut the Coral Dragon for it, maybe. Just not enough space for all that stuff in there. Side deck has the Lanciers and the Drolls, but no Cycle Readers, so I think this is probably the right call. Cycle Readers wasn't very impactful for this event, with only 5 Drytron players and none of them in top cut. So Droll is a lot more applicable, especially with people like Infernoble and Dogmatic are running around. He sided the Called By, which is debatable, but I think it puts in a reasonable amount of work when you're siding and your opponent's going to have Lanciers against you and stuff like that. And he is playing Dark Rule No More, very unpopular choice from recent events. People often preferring Forbidden Droplets, but maybe it's just something you can't get away with in this deck, and he just wants something to kill off the big boards. And in the same way that Nib is really impactful in UK Ireland meta, I think Dark Rule No More is also sometimes just very, very impactful for our format. Right, next top 4 list is from Alex from the Disciples. He might do a full profile on the channel, on the Disciples YouTube channel, which you can probably check out if they do decide to go with that. But main deck cantrips are Lancia, Ash, Gamma. Only 9 compared to the 12 from the other list that we saw, and only 1 Safer. But he's playing more Dragon Maids, so you have more access to the Bouncing Trap. And this list is just like super concise, right? There's a lot of extendy bits and 2 Rocket Synchron, so there's a lot of ways, or more ways into the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, which is really useful for a lot of things. That 1 random negate and the fact that it's so tall against like a VFD is pretty important. He is playing the Appaloosa in the extra deck and 2 Seals. So this is like, if you watched him on stream, he has the option to just go for like a more minimal board with just Seals and Savage, or you can go for like the full blowout board where you get the Apollo and do a load more stuff. It's nice to have the options, and I think it puts in a lot of work when you have the ability to go via all the combo pieces into the Apollo. Side deck, he's got triple Cyclone, which is very interesting, not a popular choice. Lightning Storm is just so much more popular at the moment because you just blow out your opponent. But he's not really so much playing this deck as a blowout deck, more as a grindy deck, where everything gets you an additional resource and a removal. So just having Cyclones for like the slightly awkward Eldritch matchups can be really impactful, and you get to hit the floodgates, which is nice too. Then you've got Drolls and Nibs, even more spell trap removal with Duster and a Red Reboot. The one really interesting choice is the Kawaki Meiru Drago. Locking your opponent out of Light and Dark can be pretty impactful. So yeah, that's an interesting one to have in the side deck. Interesting though that he didn't, so that's normally summoned off the Seals, by the way, but interesting he didn't want to go for a one of the Amorphage guys. Yeah, but I like Drago. It's a normal summon that still becomes a boot sector launch search, which is quite nice. And not going for Droll or Cycle Reader or anything like that. Sorry, not going for DD Crow or Cycle Reader or anything like that in the side deck. Instead going for Skullmeister, which is definitely more impactful in the Virtual World matchup, which is what you would expect to have the most trouble with. And as we saw, it took 50% of top cut. Right. On to second place. This is Ben Robinson's list, representing Tier 0 games here. So he is another Virtual World player, main decking Gamma, 1 Bell, and Ash. Bell, very impactful in the mirror, which is what you like to see. And he is on the Prosperities, so 3 Prosperity, 2 Desires. I think this is often the other way around. But you can banish your Zwanu or your necessity combo pieces with desires which you don't necessarily want to do, whereas Prosperity gives you a little bit more choice about what's going on. Extra deck, he does have the Beatrice, which I think we didn't really see from the other decks. Beatrice can be really important for a few different combo lines, so I think it's quite nice to have it. He is on the Fortune Tune and on the Gossip Shadow, but not on Utopic Future, or not on Coral Dragon either, so like random one-off draws are not things that he's prioritizing. No talents in the main either. So like this list is very much about having a consistent game plan and getting to additional. From what I'm seeing, it looks like he's never about getting random draws. He's always about having a consistent game plan that just resolves through all the effects that you intend to get through, rather than having too many one-off draws. Like, sure, you've got the 6 and the 9 from the Croc Dragon and the Stardust, but they're not giving you like, they're not there for most of your plays to be draw cards. They're just there because they happen to have the right levels, so they get you to your plays anyway. Side deck: 3 Lancia, 3 Droll, 2 more Bells, and 2 Ghost Ogre. I'm probably missing stuff because I don't know what Ghost Ogre really does, but maybe it's really impactful in the virtual world matchup. I guess there are a few different bits and pieces you can hit with Ghost Ogre that allow you to just steal a win there. So definitely one to look into and give a shot, given how many, two of the players in Top Cut are playing Ghost Ogre, so it must have a reasonable impact there. The side deck also has a Mischief of the Gnomes. Really interesting. You can send this with Beatrice and then stop your opponent's monsters from having the right levels. So if you can make Beatrice in the mirror match, even if you can't make VFD, you're probably going to end up winning just because you capitalize so much on that single turn when they can't play. But again, not super respecting Drytron. Sure, like Bell, Ash, and Droll very good in that matchup. But Droll's the only one that's like a proper blowout, and not going for like Psycho Reader, which is arguably the more impactful card there. But this gives him a lot more coverage, because Psycho Reader just doesn't hit anything apart from Drytron. And when you don't expect to play against it, then you don't really need to bother siding for it. So then we're on to first place. This is Josh's list. He's actually going to be coming onto the channel to discuss the deck himself, but we'll just quickly cover everything that we can see here. So maining Ash and Gamma. Again, it's 3 Prosperity, 2 Desires. He is once again on Double Chooch, 1 Zwanmu, which I guess we're saying is the standard now. And he has cut the 3rd Nyan for the 2/2 in order to fit everything into the deck. Playing 3 goods, it does make the deck slightly more consistent, which is reasonable to have. Lots of people not happy with 3 goods because they don't like drawing multiples, but you can argue the same thing for pretty much all of the draw cards that you have in the deck. Extra deck, very, very similar to the previous one. I'm not even sure if there are any changes. I think this is identical. Beatrice putting in a lot of work when you go either to the Mischief of the Gnomes, which is in the side deck, once again, or just going through like a King Long or whatever you need from your main deck. He is playing the 1 Psycho Reader. You can search this by sending and banishing the Crescendo that is also in the side deck. Just have to be a little bit wary, because that does lock you into only dark machines for the turn when you banish the Crescendo. But that does give you like so much access to Psycho Reader. So you've got 5 Psycho Readers post-siding, because you can always discard a Crescendo off a King Long. That seems pretty good. Lancia, Droll, and Bell. Bell, I think it's one of these weird ones. Only trading 1 for 1 isn't necessarily the best thing in the world, but it's very, very applicable for the meta, so it seems like a good choice. 1 Duster, 2 Lightning Storm, and then 1 Reboot. I think like Duster and Reboot are probably the best spell trap stoppers in the game right now, so it makes sense to prioritize those over the Lightning Storms and over the evenly matched. Again, evenly not a popular choice. We have seen it in top 8, but it's just not one of the best options right now for most decks to play with. But yeah, that's Josh's list. Congratulations to him and to all of the other players who made it into Top Cut from this event. Let me know if you guys want to see a German plus Nordic qualifier breakdown. You can see the round 1 breakdown here. 43 players, a bit more virtual world, but yeah, basically no Drytron, right? 1 Drytron. Just not a popular deck in Europe for some reason. But that has been our quick review of the Top Cut deck list from the UK and Ireland regionals invitational qualifier events. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.